The emperors of Rome were called the rulers of the whole world, but they had a problem. The world was too big to rule. The Roman Empire was so large that the army could not protect its borders, and there were plenty of people outside the Roman Empire who wanted to come in and take parts of it away. Imagine that you were standing in an orchard filled with apple trees. Ripe, juicy apples hang from every branch, and hungry animals are roaming in herds all around the edges. Point 3. Starving deer rush in and start to eat the apples on one side. You run at them, waving your arms and shouting. The deer dash off, but while you were chasing them, two enormous cows start snatching apples from the other side of the orchard. You turn around and charge at them, yelling, "Do not eat my apples." The cows back slowly away, but now 5 squirrels are right in the middle of the orchard, and each squirrel has an apple in his mouth and another in his paws. All alone, you will never keep all of these animals out of the orchard. And that's just how the Roman rulers felt about their empire. Wandering tribes from other parts of the world wanted to come into Rome, conquer Roman villages, use the Roman roads, eat the Roman crops, and share in the Roman wealth. The Romans called these wandering tribes barbarians. The barbarians did not live in houses like the Romans did, or take baths like the Romans did, or cook their food. Instead, they lived in tents, fought on horseback, and ate their food raw. The Romans thought that these barbarians were no better than animals. Thousands of these barbarian invaders called Huns, Vandals, Goths, Visigoths, and Ostrogoths swept down on Rome's borders. The emperors sent their armies to protect the borders, but there just were not enough soldiers to guard all the sides of the Roman Empire. And Rome had other problems too. In some places, food was running short and Roman citizens were going hungry. The terrible sickness called the plague killed many of Rome's strong fighters. And many of the emperors who inherited the job of ruling Rome were not very good at running an empire. One of them went mad and tried to make his horse into a government official. Finally, an emperor named Diocletian came to the throne. He decided that the empire was too big for one ruler and one army to protect, so he divided the Roman Empire into 2 parts. The part of the empire with Italy and Rome in it was called the Western Roman Empire. The part with Asia Minor and Egypt in it was called the Eastern Roman Empire. Then, Diocletian appointed another emperor, a man named Maximian, to rule with him. He also chose 2 more men to be junior emperors. These junior emperors were called Caesars. They were like vice presidents. One helped Diocletian with the task of ruling, and the other helped Maximian. From now on, there would be 2 Roman empires, 2 Roman emperors, and 2 Caesars. Diocletian decided to divide the Roman Empire in the year 286, that we call this year AD 286 or CE 286. Both of those abbreviations mean that. Diocletian's decision happened 286 years after the birth of Jesus. AD stands for Anno Domini, which means the year of our Lord. For Christians, every year after the birth of Christ was his year. Many people prefer to use the abbreviation CE, which means Christian era or Common Era. When you are reading, you will notice that some authors use AD, while others use CE. But both of these abbreviations tell you the same thing, that the date comes after the birth of Jesus. Diocletian hoped that the Roman Empire would be easier to protect, now that 4 men were working to keep it safe. But he was wrong. 200 years after Diocletian's death, the Western Roman Empire was finally conquered by barbarian tribes. In 410 AD, barbarians burned Rome and carried away all of its treasures. Nothing was left but the Roman roads and bridges, and slowly, even those began to crumble away into dust. After the Western Roman Empire fell, all of the countries that had once belonged to Rome were free of Roman rule. One of those countries was Britain. Do you remember flying over Britain on your magic carpet? The Roman soldiers in Britain were fighting fierce, dangerous warriors who were painted blue. These warriors were called Celts. The Celts lived in Britain before the Romans invaded the island. They were not happy to see the Romans arrive. And even though the Romans set up camps and towns in the south part of Britain, they never managed to conquer all of the Celts. When the Western Roman Empire fell, the Celts drove the last Roman soldiers out of their country. Now Britain was theirs again. The Celts were proud of their fighting strength. They praised men who had courage in battle. They sang songs and told stories about great warriors. Specially trained singers called bards learned stories about the chieftains and battle heroes of long ago. The stories were not written down. Instead, Bards learned them from each other and memorized them so that they could be told again and again. These stories told Celtic children that it was good to be strong and warlike. One story told around the fires of the Celts was of Craith and his companions, 3 warriors with special powers. The story might have sounded something like this: "Oh, any day," the warrior Craith said to himself, "I am a great fighter and have never lost a battle, but I am lonely. I want to marry a woman with hair as black as a raven's wing, skin as white as snow, and cheeks as red as blood. But the only woman as beautiful as all that is held prisoner by the great giant Fover of the mighty blows at the end of the world." So Craith set off to fight the giant Fover and rescue the beautiful woman who was the giant's prisoner. As he walked along the road, he saw a warrior standing at the roadside with a rock in his hand. "What are you doing with that rock?" asked Craith. "See that bird, sitting on the topmost twig of the tree at the end of the world," the warrior said, pointing. "I am going to throw this rock and knock it off and eat it for my dinner." Craith squinted, but he could see nothing. "You would better come with me," he said to the warrior. "I could use a companion with eyes as good as yours." And so the 2 men walked along. Soon the 2 of them saw a warrior lying on the ground with his ear pressed into the dirt. "What are you doing?" Craith asked Doe. The warrior said, "I am listening to the grass grow down at the end of the world." "You would better come with us," Craith said. "Your hearing might help us in our quest." And so the 3 men walked along. Soon they heard a noise behind them: thump, thump, thump. They turned and saw a warrior coming up. Fast behind them, he was hopping on one foot, and his knee was bent so that his other leg was tied up behind him. "Why don't you untie your other leg?" Craith asked Ado. The hopping warrior said, "If I did that, I would run so fast that I would soon be at the end of the world, and then where would I go?" "Come with us," the 3 said, and they walked on towards the end of the world. Soon the castle of the giant Fover of the mighty blows came into sight. The warrior Craith and his 3 companions stood beneath the walls and called up, "Giant, giant Fover, we have come to rescue the woman with hair like a raven's wing, skin like snow, and cheeks like blood. Set her free." When the giant heard them calling, he laughed. "Bring me 3 bottles of water from the well at the other end of the world," he shouted out his window. "Then I will let her go. I swear." "Go and get the water," Craith said to the hopping warrior. The warrior untied his leg and set his foot on the ground. Instantly he was gone. More than a moment passed, and he was at the well. All the way on the other end of the world, he filled his bottles and started back. But halfway there, he thought, "I am going so fast that I will be back before they can blink. I might as well sit down and rest a moment." He sat down under a tree to rest, the bottles of water by his side. But the sun was warm, the turf beneath him was soft, and soon he fell fast asleep. Back at the giant's castle, Craith was growing restless. "Where is he?" he asked his other companions. The warrior with the keen ears lay down and pressed his ear against the ground. "I can hear him snoring halfway around the world," he said. "Here, you with the eyes, throw a rock to wake him up." So the warrior with the sharp eyes peered halfway around the world and saw his friend dozing by the roadside. He lifted a rock and threw it. The rock flew through the air for hundreds of miles until it hit the sleeping man ping right between the eyes. He woke up with a start. "I have been asleep," he exclaimed. "I would better go back with this water." And he scooped his bottles up and began to run. A moment later, he was at the giant Fover's castle, with the water from the well at the world's other end. The giant Fover was furious to see that his task had been done, but he had given his word, and so he had to free the beautiful woman with hair black as the raven's wing, skin like snow, and cheeks like blood. And Craith married her, and they lived happily ever after. And always after that, the 3 warriors with the keen eyes, the sharp ears, and the quick feet lived with Craith and went with him into battle, and together they could not be defeated.